The Department of Government Efficiency, that's DOGE, they have now gained access to the documents and files and payments of USAID. And look, with this, the investigations are going into what the United States Agency for International Development has been funding, and it's now sparking a national debate. And also, the investigations into U.S. spending, they don't end there. Elon Musk, through the DOGE department, has also now gained access to the Treasury Department payment system and their data. And meanwhile, Trump has also signed an order to create the first ever U.S. sovereign wealth fund. It might even buy TikTok with it. Also, Trump's threats to have the U.S. retake control of the Panama Canal. Well, the threats seem to be working. Panama has now pulled out of the CCP's Belt and Road Initiative. I'll be talking about these topics and more today. Let's jump into it. Now, first off, folks, the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, under Elon Musk. Well, it has gained access to USAID. And the investigations into what the United States Agency for International Development has been giving our money to is now sparking a very big debate. The agency is now being moved under the State Department. They're kind of reforming its operations as we speak, and it could serve a different mission going forward through this. Now, Elon Musk has been taken to X to highlight the many, many examples of what U.S. taxpayer dollars have been spent on through USAID. I mean, I'll just give you an example. One where he commented, mind-blowing, allegedly shows that USAID and others had sent over $40 million to scientists, guess where? Wuhan, China. To do what? Well, to work on bat coronavirus emergence. Interesting. Now, Mike Benz, executive director of the Foundation for Freedom Online, noted the impact of the information release, and he said on X, quote, "What you will quickly find as you enter the amazing USAID vortex of despair is that virtually every powerful political and financial motor of American society that promotes and lobbies for USAID is either directly on USAID's payroll, works at a place that is, or his/her donors do," suggesting, of course, that USAID seems to be giving money to people who are defending it, and it's kind of its own little nexus. Now, Benz also noted that even the campaigns of, light-on-crime prosecutors, call them the Soros DAs and stuff, it wasn't just money from Soros, a lot of it was money from USAID. It turns out they're one of the big funders of these individuals. Although he noted a common pattern, which is this. Oftentimes it seems the money goes through other organizations. It goes to one organization first, your taxpayer dollars, and then USAID gives that money to, a nonprofit. That nonprofit then backs the various campaigns and social movements like these. And so it kind of goes through a two-stage process, meaning it's not direct in often case. Now, alerts also went out, notably, telling USAID workers to stay home as Elon Musk moved to investigate the organization. Fox News said this. It says, U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID staffers, were told in an email that its Washington headquarters would be closed to staffers Monday, two sources confirmed to Fox News Digital. It says some staffers reported getting locked out of the USAID computer system overnight, according to the Associated Press, and people who remained in the system got emails stating that, quote, at the direction of agency leadership, the headquarters facility, quote, will be closed to agency personnel on Monday, February 3rd. And notes that Elon Musk, who is spearheading the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE effort, had said during an X Spaces conversation that President Donald Trump agreed that USAID, which distributes humanitarian development and security assistance across the world, should be shut down. And the big argument is, well, they're not really giving government assistance. They're funding things like a lot of, just like far left policy type stuff. A lot of stuff around the LGBTQ plus movement and so on all around the world, and other things along those lines, suggesting, of course, that maybe this is not what we thought we were spending our money on. Now, on this point, it appears that USAID is not shutting down, despite that statement. Instead, it looks like it's being wrapped up in the State Department. They're now merging it with the State Department, giving it some additional oversight. And as of now, it does look like it's facing big changes at the very least. Some people might be fired from it. A lot of money might get cut. We'll see. And on that note, it may now be working on very different initiatives going forward. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has now been placed as the acting director of USAID, meaning, of course, this has now gone through. And he said in a recent press event in El Salvador that under his new leadership, the functions of USAID will start being more in line with the foreign policies of the State Department. Watch.
I'm the acting director of USAID. I've delegated that authority to someone, but I stay in touch with him. And again, our goal was to go in and align our foreign aid to the national interest. But if you go to mission after mission and embassy after embassy around the world, you will often find that in many cases, USAID is involved in programs that run counter to what we're trying to do in our national strategy with that country or with that region. That cannot continue. USAID is not an independent, non-governmental entity. It is an entity that spends taxpayer dollars, and it needs to spend it, as the statute says, in alignment with the policy directives that they get from the Secretary of State, the National Security Council, and the President.
Now, when it comes to USAID and all these moves taking place, this is not just a one-way street. Democrats are pushing back very, very hard against it. They're even trying right now, they're even making statements saying they're going to use everything they possibly can to try to stop Elon Musk. And the main argument they have is that Elon Musk, with the DOGE department investigating these organizations, he was not elected or confirmed through a Senate vote, and he's been given pretty broad powers to investigate organizations of our government, USAID, a lot of government payments and other things. And he's kind of making a lot of them look bad because he's exposing documents and information on them. Now, several Democrat representatives spoke about this in an event outside the USAID headquarters. This is Representative Jamie Raskin on this.
Elon Musk, you didn't create USAID. The United States Congress did for the American people. And just like Elon Musk did not create USAID, he doesn't have the power to destroy it. And who's going to stop him? We are. We're going to stop him.
This is just part of the big picture. The investigations into U.S. spending, they don't end at USAID. In fact, Elon Musk is kind of charging forward, even with that access going to other things. Elon Musk, through the DOGE department, has also now gained access to the Treasury Department payment system and their data. And this is according to people who spoke anonymously. This is the Washington Post on this. Here's what it says. It says, on Friday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent approved access to the Treasury's payment system for a team led by Tom Krause, a Silicon Valley executive working in concert with Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, the People said. And it said David A. Lebrick, who served in non-political roles at Treasury for several decades and had been the acting secretary before Bessent's confirmation, had refused to turn over access to Musk's surrogates. People familiar with the situation told the Washington Post, and it notes that Trump officials placed Lebrick on administrative leave because he tried blocking Musk, apparently. And then he announced his retirement Friday in an email to colleagues, meaning that attempted blockade may have come to an end. Now, it says that spokespeople for the Treasury and DOGE declined to comment. The sensitive system run by the Bureau of Fiscal Service control the flow of more than $6 trillion annually. Tens of millions of people across the country rely on the systems, and it says they are responsible for paying Social Security and Medicare benefits, salaries for federal personnel, payments to government contractors and grant recipients, and tax refunds, among tens of thousands of other functions. And Elon Musk's team is now able to sift through all that. Now, Trump weighed in on this as well while he was just signing an executive order to create a new sovereign wealth fund for the United States. Trump said this.
President, why is it important for Elon Musk to have access to the payment systems at Treasury?
Well, he's got access only to letting people go that he thinks are no good if we agree with him. And it's only if we agree with him. He's a very talented guy from the standpoint of management and costs. And we put him in charge of seeing what he can do with certain groups and certain numbers. Some of the numbers are horrible, what he's found. Think of it, $100 million on condoms to Hamas, and many other things that are frankly even more ridiculous. And they're finding tremendous waste, really waste more than anything else, I think you could say.
Briefly on that, because news is moving very fast right now. Slight tangent. What Trump was signing when he made that statement was an executive order to direct the U.S. Treasury and Commerce Departments to create a sovereign wealth fund. And basically, this is a new state-owned investment fund that can decide how to spend money from things like a government surplus or from, money gained from foreign currency operations like tariffs maybe, and things like that. He's floating that one of its first moves could be this purchase of TikTok. He wants to have the U.S. government buy TikTok if he can get the CCP to fold on the sale, because they're kind of blocking it right now. But briefly on that as well, also, Trump is expected to pull the U.S. out of the United Nations Human Rights Council. This would stop the funding to UNHCR also. And it's not just the UNHCR. Trump is also pulling funding from UNRWA, which is the United Nations group that works on services for people in Gaza, and that has been accused of having ties to terrorism. In fact, several UNRWA individuals were involved in the October 7th attack. So that's now over, at least when it comes to them getting money from us. But we'll see what happens. Trump did pull the U.S. out of the UN Human Rights Council in his first term in office, and we're, of course, back in. At least we were. But back to the investigations now being carried out by the DOGE Department. These investigations are bringing attention to the whole nexus of activist organizations, news outlets, there's even news outlets on this, and public figures who are recipients of taxpayer money. We're giving them our money. And these individuals, while getting our money, are pushing various partisan agendas. For example, even some of the news outlets were getting taxpayer dollars while running investigations on members of Trump's team. Suggesting, of course, that some of the politicized attacks may have been funded by our own taxes. At least that's the accusation right now. The Trump administration looks poised to eliminate a lot of that funding, or at least change what the money's going to. We'll see where it goes. Democrats are looking to challenge those attempts. They're very strongly trying to stop Elon Musk right now, saying they're going to do everything they can to stop him. And we'll very likely see a lot of back and forth with this as well. And guess what? It gets even bigger. In addition to all of this, there's some backlash against Elon Musk and the DOGE department, and some of this is resulting in death threats and also possibilities of legal prosecutions of those individuals. First off, Elon Musk raised this point on X. He pointed to a collage of screenshots of death threats posted by a lot of people on Reddit, and it's not even limited to just this. There's tons of them. And he said, quote, they have broken the law, suggesting by making death threats against him and his team, people are violating American law. Now, in response to that, United States Attorney Edward Martin issued an open letter to Elon Musk saying, quote, we will not tolerate threats against DOGE workers or law breaking by the disgruntled. And let me show you the official letter he sent to Elon Musk. He said this, quote, let me assure you of this. We will pursue any and all legal action against anyone who impedes your work, again, the DOGE department, or threatens your people. He said, we will not act like the previous administration, look the other way as the Antifa and BLM rioters, as well as thugs with guns, trashed our capital city. He said, we will protect DOGE and other works no matter what. And the letter goes on to note a recent case that was brought out. Edward Martin states, quote, late last week, we indicted an economist who worked at the Fed, meaning the Federal Reserve, for economic espionage for the communist Chinese. He said, please be very aware that there are those who are acting against our American people in every way. Refer to us any questionable conduct or details that you find or notice. And he adds to Elon Musk, quote, please keep in touch. On the point of that, of the former Federal Reserve employee who was just arrested, actually just recently, that individual was John Harold Rogers. According to the Justice Department on January 31st, he was arrested today on charges that he conspired to steal Federal Reserve trade secrets for the benefit of the People's Republic of China, the Chinese regime. And it adds that China holds a large amount of U.S. foreign debt, approximately $816 billion as of October 2024. And the data that Rogers, being accused at least, shared with his co-conspirators could allow China to manipulate the U.S. market in a manner similar to insider trading, gaining advanced knowledge of U.S. economic policy, including advanced knowledge of changes to the federal funds rate, could provide China with an advantage when selling or buying U.S. bonds or securities. Now, look, in light of all of this, it seems that the warning from the U.S. Attorney's Office, right, Edward Martin, is that not only are they looking at any threats against the DOGE department or any efforts to block its investigations, suggesting that even these individuals saying we will do everything we can to stop you, those people may also be investigated. Some of those people blocking this, inhibiting, the actions of a government agency, or blocking even law enforcement activity, anything they're doing, anything fishy that gets discovered through the investigations themselves, all of this could result in criminal actions, right? These people could face criminal charges. And in fact, Edward Martin had followed up that statement, that open letter to Elon Musk, by saying they're now working with the Justice Department and the FBI to actually criminally investigate some of what's happening right now. Suggesting, of course, not only the death threats, but even the efforts to block their activities and their investigations. Now, look, meanwhile, Trump is standing by his tariffs, and Mexico has so far folded. They got a 1-month break on the tariffs, and they're now sending 10,000 members of the Mexican National Guard to help secure the southern border from their side against drug trafficking and illegal immigration. And Canada has now likewise struck a deal. This came just hours after the deal with Mexico. And Canada is also now getting a 30-day delay. It's not off the table. 30-day delay on the tariffs after they agreed to secure the northern border and implement a $1.3 billion border plan. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced a tariff delay and outlined what this Canadian border plan consists of on X. This is Justin Trudeau. He said, quote, "I just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology, and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on the protecting the border. In addition, he says, Canada is making new commitments to appoint a fentanyl czar. We will list cartels as terrorists. They're joining us. Ensure 24/7 eyes on the border. Launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. He said, I have also signed a new intelligence directive on organized crime and fentanyl and will be backing it with $200 million. Proposed tariffs will be paused for at least 30 days while we work together. Now, here's Trump's response to it. I'm very pleased with this initial outcome, and the tariffs announced on Saturday will be paused for a 30-day period to see whether or not a final economic deal with Canada can be structured. He said, fairness for all. And look, 30 days, we'll know whether this works or not. We'll know whether the tariffs are off the table. Leading up to the deal, though, things were looking a bit choppy. Canada was starting to push back, as was Mexico. They were pushing back against the United States on the tariffs. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had discussed some of these actions. This is what he was saying leading up to it. Watch this.
Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives. Like the American tariffs, our response will also be far-reaching and include everyday items such as American beer, wine, and bourbon, fruits and fruit juices, including orange juice, along with vegetables, perfume, clothing, and shoes. It'll include major consumer products like household appliances, furniture, and sports equipment, and materials like lumber and plastics, along with much, much more. And as part of our response, we are considering, with the provinces and territories, several non-tariff measures, including some relating to critical minerals, energy, procurement, and other partnerships.
On that point, Trump was not folding either, as you might expect. Instead of folding, he said that if Canada were to do that, if they responded with their own tariffs, then he would just double the tariffs on Canada. And he also laid out his views of that dispute. Watch this.
Canada's been very abusive of the United States for many years. They don't allow our banks. Did you know that? Canada does not allow banks to go in. If you think about it, that's pretty amazing. If we have a U.S. bank, they don't allow them to go in. Canada's been very tough on oil, on energy. They don't allow our farm products in, essentially. They don't allow a lot of things in, and we allow everything to come in. It's been a one-way street. We subsidize Canada by the tune of about $200 billion a year. And for what? What do we get out of it? We don't get anything out of it. I love the people of Canada. I disagree with the leadership of Canada. And something's going to happen there. But if they want to play the game, I don't mind. We can play the game all they want.
With this, Trump has also reiterated that a solution for Canada is to become the 51st state of the United States. And folks, I thought he was joking about this when he first said it. I think a lot of us thought he was joking about it. It's gotten to a point now where it's no longer clear if Trump is joking or if he's serious about Canada becoming the 51st state. And actually, it's frankly starting to look like he actually means it. But trade war or not, on the business level, it does seem that Canadian businesses, whether the tariffs go through or not, Canadian businesses are kind of folding on this. A survey came out saying that around half of the businesses in Canada, they're now looking to move their production to the United States. And Trump has been saying that. He's saying, look, if you don't want to pay tariffs, do manufacturing here. You don't have to import it. We don't have to import it. You can avoid the tariffs. Build the business here. Create American jobs. It can still be a Canadian business, right? You can still send money home if you want, but you don't pay tariffs and you get Americans working. This is a move that Trump said that other businesses all around the world, they can use if they don't want to pay tariffs. Gateway Pundit said this, said according to a new KPMG survey, nearly half of Canadian businesses, 48%, are actively planning, meaning they're in the process of doing it, to move production or investments to the United States to stay competitive. And while 60%, it says, are exploring acquisitions in the U.S. market. Recognizing the writing on the wall, an overwhelming 65% of Canadian businesses took proactive measures before President Trump even stepped into office. They were already doing this. Many began shipping goods to the U.S. ahead of potential tariffs, ensuring their products avoided any sudden cost increases. They got ready for it. Now, Trump's National Economic Council Director, Kevin Hassett, also commented that he believes Canadian officials are misinterpreting Trump's actions as being part of a trade war. He says that's not the right way to frame it. He's saying this is not a trade war, it's a drug war. And he made these comments on CNBC. He says President Trump was absolutely 100% clear this is not a trade war, this is a drug war. He said the good news is in our conversation over the weekend, one of the things we've noticed is that the Mexicans are very, very serious about doing what President Trump said in the executive order, and that is getting more aggressive, much more aggressive about the drug war. But the Canadian appears to have misinterpreted the plain language of the executive order, and they're interpreting it as a trade war. Now look, you could argue both ways. I know he's saying they're misinterpreting it as a trade war when it's actually a drug war. There's kind of both. You know, Donald Trump has also come out, when he's been asked, for example, what can be done to resolve this, the drug war is one part of it. Border security is one part of it, and that is definitely one of the big focuses of these tariffs. That was one of the key parts of these tariffs, stopping the fentanyl trafficking. But Trump is also raising issue around the trade deficit. And so he's also saying that we won't really end this until the trade deficit has been settled. And he says, look, we're basically financing or, funding the Canadian government. That's what Trump is saying. And so, look, in my opinion, it's a bit of both. You could argue that maybe the drug war is the trigger for this, but it's also the trade deficit. Now, in other news, though, after threats from Trump retaking the Panama Canal, remember he was talking about this, if Panama cannot show independence from the CCP, well, Panama is now pulling out of China's Belt and Road Initiative. They're kind of going in favor of what Trump said. I'll be talking more about this win for Trump's tough guy diplomacy after we come back from a quick break. We'll be back in less than 1 minute, so don't go anywhere.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. Chinese influence may be pushed out of the Panama Canal. Secretary of State Marco Rubio traveled to Panama. He met with Panama's President Jose Raul Mulino. And this is in regards to Trump's threats to have the United States retake control of the Panama Canal. The argument from Trump is that the deal of handing it over was made with Panama, not with China. And China has been undermining this. And during the meeting, Rubio presented a kind of ultimatum, let's say, to Panama. Basically, either reduce the influence of the Chinese regime over the canal, or they're going to face actions from the U.S. government. Here's a readout from the meeting from the U.S. State Department. It says this. Secretary Rubio informed President Molino and Minister Martinez Acha that President Trump has made a preliminary determination that the current position of influence and control of the Chinese Communist Party over the Panama Canal area is a threat to the canal and represents a violation of the treaty concerning the permanent neutrality and operation of the Panama Canal. Something that basically says if Panama does not maintain the neutrality of it, the U.S. can take it right back. Now, Secretary Rubio, it says, made clear that the status quo is unacceptable, China having influence over it, and that absent immediate changes, it would require the United States to take measures necessary to protect its rights under the treaty. Now, here's more of the meeting from The Guardian. It says this. It says, meanwhile, Molino stressed that sovereignty over the canal is not up for debate, but he offered help repatriating some migrants traveling towards the U.S. through the country from South America if the U.S. paid for it. Because, you know, Panama's kind of the choke point. That's where the Darien Gap is, right? Molino, it says, suggested a possible expansion of an existing agreement with the U.S. from last July that could pave the way for direct deportations of non-Panamanian migrants, meaning all those Venezuelans and Colombians and so on, who crossed the Darien Gap jungle on Panama's southern border with Colombia. And after the meeting, Molino said, quote, "We had a very respectable and cordial meeting, but that the canal is operated by our country and will continue to be." Now, with that said, President Molino issued an announcement soon after that. The country will not be renewing its deal with the Chinese Communist Party for its Belt and Road Initiative. CCP influence, at least in some regards, is on its way out. And on this point as well, it seems many countries in Latin America are also changing their stance on Trump. Mexico, for example, they're already folding on the tariffs. Panama folded on CCP influence, going against CCP. Colombia and Venezuela, they folded on their threats, saying, we're not going to accept deportees, that's over. And it seems others are suddenly having a change in heart as well. The Federation for American Immigration Reform said this in a report. It says countries in Latin America called for an emergency summit after President Donald Trump decisively won the first showdown with a country refusing to accept repatriation of citizens deported from the United States. Now it says Colombia not only gave in after a lively exchange last weekend, but President Gustavo Petro even sent his own plane to bring the deportees home. He actually got a presidential plane to help with it. It says this triggered calls for an emergency summit among Latin American leaders on how to counter the Trump administration, only for the summit to be promptly called off. They canceled the whole thing. It says the idea of a summit to counter the Trump administration's hawkish line on immigration was suggested by Xiomara Castro, president of Honduras. The summit was then canceled when only 2 leaders of the 33 member states, 2 out of 33 of the Community of Latin American Caribbean States, or CALIC, expressed an interest in attending. It fell apart very quickly. The idea of a summit to challenge President Trump, which fizzled out almost as soon as the idea was floated, shows that this organization of nations are in a very different position, it says, than they were under the previous administration. They had the idea, they tried organizing it, nobody wanted to be part of it. And also, on a related point, mass illegal immigration also seems to be suddenly dropping. I wonder why. Trump's border czar Tom Homan is saying that illegal crossings are now down 93%. And he also said that as things go forward, well, we're going to see increases in deportations as well. They're building it up slowly. Also, folks, breaking news, RFK Jr., the HHS nominee, he is advanced to a full Senate floor vote. He got through, at least the first stage of it. RFK Jr. is one step closer to becoming the Department of Health and Human Services Secretary after the Senate Finance Committee just now advanced his nomination to a full Senate floor vote. The full Senate vote, where he needs a majority, right, at least 50 votes, is expected to happen next week. I'll keep you all updated on what happens with the vote, but we're now one step closer to making America healthy again, right? Maha, again, it seems. Now, folks, that said, hit the like button, leave a comment. Let's jump into some questions. All right, let's see here. All right. what a whirlwind of stories, right, folks? One sec. Now, briefly on RFK Jr., just before I jump into questions. Briefly on RFK Jr., a lot of people are taking Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, and his confirmation as kind of being a signal of how the vote could go. RFK is debatably more controversial than Pete Hegseth, depending on how you look at it. He is facing a lot of pushback. So did Pete. I would actually argue that Pete Hegseth, again, former Fox News host, he faced more allegations, more, kind of just hit pieces and so on than RFK Jr. has. But the amount of pushback RFK is getting is kind of similar. Now, Pete Hegseth, he got 50-50 votes. It was pretty much split right down the middle, and he only got through because the tie-breaking vote is the vice president, right? So J.D. Vance was the tie-breaking vote. Pete actually did have a few Republicans vote against him, and it's probably going to be the same way with RFK Jr., I'd say. If he does get in, it's going to be a very close vote. So we'll see. He is facing a lot of pushback from many individuals. RFK has brought out the point that he personally believes many of our public leaders take too much money from big pharma. They are big money between media advertising. They're also big money behind a lot of political campaigns. And he is arguing that basically that could influence the vote. We'll see if that's true or not. You can decide for yourself. All right, folks, that said, first question, Ashley from California. You're saying, see what happens if ever you have an effective border czar. Yeah. Amazing, right? People are bringing up the point, too, a few things on what we're seeing with the border. Now, under the Biden administration, they were saying we have the most secure border like ever, right? And people are being like, what do you mean most secure border ever when we have, 10 million people who've illegally entered the United States under this administration alone, or that one? That doesn't look very secure to me, and also all the sanctuary city policies and so on. What has been what has been getting a lot of attention lately is this. One, we're finding out, as many of you already knew because we've been talking about it this whole time, a lot of the border crisis was being facilitated. It was NGOs, it was a program, right? They were just letting people in. And so you could argue, yeah, we secured it. It's like saying, yeah, we have bouncers outside at the club, but the bouncers are just letting everybody in. Are they bouncers, or are they just people stamping hands or something like that? You know what I mean? If they're not denying entry to anybody. They were preventing illegal immigration if people, bypassed them and just entered. But a lot of those people were still just being sent all around the country, just doing it again anyways, because there was nothing really to stop them. There was no consequence of it. And the other big thing we found was this. I think this is probably the most shocking revelation for a lot of people. You have ICE now, immigration enforcement, going around, and they're arresting pedophiles, they're arresting murderers, they're arresting rapists, like horrible stuff. They're going around, they're arresting Tren de Aragua gang members, they're arresting the people who were behind they were doing that takeover in that apartment complex in Aurora in Colorado. They arrested those people, or in Illinois, right? And people are saying, wait a minute. You knew these people were here already? Because what ICE is doing is they're going by existing intelligence. Look, we're only 2 weeks into the Trump administration. It's not like they built this all in 2 weeks. They knew where these people were. They knew about them. They knew who they were. They knew where they lived. They knew their crimes, and they were not deporting them. And so now that this is happening, that's one of the big arguments coming up is, well, look, why were these people being allowed to stay here? Obviously, they were being allowed to stay here despite the knowledge of what they were doing and who they were. And, I think that's been one of the real shocking revelations for a lot of people when it comes to, what we're watching right now. Other people would shoot back and say, well, they're not just arresting, people who've committed additional crimes. They're also just arresting people who illegally crossed. And yeah, that's also kind of the case. They're coming out now, they're saying, well, we're arresting criminals, but guess what? Illegally crossing the border is also a crime. And so if you're illegal here, you're a criminal, frankly. And that's what they're saying, right? I'm not like that's the actual statement. And so they are going after them as well. But also, yeah, it's interesting to see as well. They ended the Remain in Mexico, or they ended the ability of them to come into the U.S. and just stay here. They reinstated Remain in Mexico. So even people trying to, get amnesty here, they have to wait in Mexico until their cases are heard, meaning there's just no free access anymore. That whole thing is over. Science Chick 72, you're saying no Canada as a state. That's like adding another California in terms of congressional seats. I've had the same thought. Yeah. I mean, look, this is the irony of it. I'm surprised Democrats aren't pushing for it. And look, if I was like a Democrat senator, I'd be like, yes, make Canada great again. Go Trump. Make Canada the 51st state. Because you know what's going to happen if Canada gets in? If Canada becomes the 51st state, they're going to vote like they voted for Justin Trudeau. You know what I mean? You're going to have Governor Trudeau and Governor Newsom, and they're kind of similar in terms of policy, right? They're going to be just like a very big state, and you're going to add about as many electoral college votes as you have for like Texas and California. If Canada becomes the 51st state, it's possible Republicans will never win another election. And there's an argument on that, right? Frankly, I'm surprised the Democrats aren't pushing for it, right? Like, this would kind of, based on the way Canadians vote, this would kind of ruin any chance of Republicans being elected ever again. I'm surprised they're not the biggest advocates for it, frankly. I mean, unless Canada changes, because they might, right? Canada, with again, Justin Trudeau is being pushed out, it's possible a conservative could come in. Canada might change, but, we'll see how that goes. James Dyson, you're saying, let's see, Canada would be the biggest state. Think about how big the countries would be. We'd have a very big country if that did happen. Some people would actually suggest that, Canada almost did become part of the U.S. Go back to the American Revolution, of course. Technically the loyalists to the British, they went to Canada, and we never beat them back. They got to keep their country, right? James, you're saying that, it would be the biggest county, not country, right? Well, that'd be the thing, too, because Canada has different provinces. Every province is ridiculously massive. The issue with that, though, is that not all the provinces necessarily have a big population. Like, yeah, they're huge, but a lot of it's just uninhabitable, like snow and stuff like that. Most people in Canada, they live closer to the southern border, and so a lot of Canada is just unused open woodland and stuff like that. So, you know, and again, representation and all that stuff, it goes by population, not by land mass. And so it wouldn't make a huge difference on that front, but it would still make a big difference in terms of like statehood, absolutely. Maybe they could do something more like, maybe they do something more like our agreement with like Puerto Rico or something. You know, they become a U.S. territory, they can have their own sovereign government. Maybe they could do that, we'll see. Let's see here. Seymour Butts, you're saying the big question is why? Why would a U.S. department send hundreds of millions to fund these ridiculous programs? Are you talking about USAID? You know, it's funny because I was like, why don't they just call it USAID? And I assume it's because the way we pronounce it sounds too much like USA, right? USAID or USA. Anyways, USAID, this government agency that, you know, a lot of us believed it was feeding the hungry and the poor in like Sudan and stuff like that. You know, when I used to think USAID, I was thinking those commercials from the 90s about sending $1 to like, you know, build a well in Africa or something like that. You know, that's what I was thinking. But it's not like that. We're finding that they're buying condoms for Hamas. We're finding things like that, or the Taliban or something. We're finding they were giving money to help the Taliban grow opium. Why are we doing that? Why are we bankrolling opium fields in Afghanistan? Now you could say it's for the medical industry. They do use opium for, you know, of course, painkillers. And so there is that. But I would doubt that all that goes towards legitimate business. We're finding USAID is kind of behind a lot of the real big activist organizations. And those really big activist organizations give money to a lot of very big activist groups and activist individuals. And so if you understand that there's this kind of whole ecosystem of very, very far left, like, I'm not talking like moderate Democrat, I'm talking like far, far left activities being bankrolled by our tax dollars, and they're playing very partisan roles in society. It raises some questions of whether that's even legal. You know, normally when you talk about government financing, if you get government money, you have to be kind of neutral. There are kind of really strict requirements with this. You could argue it's not always enforced. You know, if you're like a nonprofit, there's certain laws around partisanship, right? But, you know, it raises the question, I think, of whether this is a legitimate use of taxpayer dollars, and also whether this is funding basically one side of our political spectrum and harming the other side of it using our money. That this is something influencing elections, it's influencing public policy, and it's almost like its whole system where they're taking our money to fund their own operations. You know, that's the argument with it. The Democrat argument pushing back again is they say, well, who is Elon Musk to decide this? And, you know, it's a fair point too. But I do think when Trump has commented on this, he's been saying that Elon Musk's just flagging things. And it's not like Elon Musk is personally firing people, or it's not like he's personally filing like, you know, criminal complaints. He's bringing attention to issues and flagging things for review by other agencies and departments. And when he does that, then they're saying, well, is that a violation of the law? Is that something we should be spending our money on? And it's being determined by outside organizations. The DOGE department is just doing the investigations, basically, flagging for additional investigations. Martin McKenzie, you're saying Canada has been acting exactly like the Chinese communists. They sell to us, but we can't sell to them. Plus, they facilitate illegal cartel operations. We are being nice to them with tariffs. We could declare war. Yeah. By the way, one of my favorite movies, you ever see Canadian Bacon? About, it's like, it's this whole movie about like America wants to start a war with Canada. It's a very funny movie. Very, very funny movie, I believe from like the 80s or 90s, you know. On that note. On that point too, yeah, it's true that Canada, we do have a very large trade deficit with them. Canada would come back and say, look, they buy a lot of our goods too. They do buy a lot of American goods. But of course, it's a very imbalanced trade relationship without a doubt. I don't think anybody can argue otherwise. They also restrict a lot of American businesses. They have a lot of things that prevent us from doing business there. They don't let our banks in. While, this is one thing people pointed out. Why are American banks banned from Canada, but Chinese banks are not banned from Canada? Why can the Bank of China have banks in Canada, but American banks can't? Why is that? That's a good question to ask. On the point of China, Canada has actually done pretty well in some regards. They were in front of the United States when it came to going after things like the Confucius Institutes. They did more on that than the U.S. did initially. There are also issues of Canadian subversion from China. In fact, the head of CSIS, which is Canada's equivalent to like the CIA, they had a very famous report, I believe from like the late 90s, called the Sidewinder Report, where the head of their intelligence agency warned that a lot of Canadian officials were bought off by the Chinese Communist Party. It was a very shocking report. I mean, imagine if the CIA and the US came out with a huge report and just started saying a bunch of government officials were being controlled by the CCP, that we had government officials who were Chinese Communist Party agents. That's what they did in Canada. The head of their intelligence agency actually released a public report saying that. It was called the Sidewinder Report, for anybody interested in looking it up. And of course, they got accused of being racist and so on, which was a lot more of a buzzword in Canada at the time than the U.S. And the whole thing basically went nowhere. But there were accusations of that. And now, when it comes to fentanyl and Trump pushing back against fentanyl, one of the big arguments is also Chinese influence. Why does the Bank of China have an open slate to work in Canada, but we don't? Why does Canada let all these other things in, but not us? Why does Canada, for example, TD Bank is accused of doing some of the money laundering for the cartels? We'll see if that's true or not. But you could argue maybe they weren't aware of it. I don't know. But without a doubt, a lot of the Canadian casinos are used for money laundering. There have been pretty good investigative reports revealing this. And also the CCP has been allowed to, or Chinese individuals have been allowed to buy up just massive amounts of land and homes in Canada. And so they have a lot of problems with this stuff. Let's see here. Josh Ian Cruz, you're saying, don't you think the Democrats have been employing a Cloward-Piven strategy? Many people have argued this. The Cloward-Piven strategy is basically like this. The idea is basically you basically destroy a government by creating a welfare state. That you take the money and you siphon it out of legitimate service and into illegitimate service. You make the government no longer serve the people, right? You basically get a whole bunch of people on welfare and you put more and more and more pressure on the hardworking Americans, where maybe you're like me or most of you here, I'd assume. I'd say we're probably a lot of hardworking people, right? And you live with the mentality that, hey, my tax dollars are not benefiting me. They're funding people who just plain old don't feel like working, or they're funding all these crazy activist movements, things that I don't want to spend my money on. Why do I want to buy condoms for the Taliban? I don't want to spend my money on that. Maybe it stops them from procreating. Maybe that's a good thing. But other than that, I don't want my money being spent on that personally. And so it does eventually, the Cloward-Piven strategy is this idea that you just create so much weight on the legitimate functions of the government, and you keep building and building the welfare state and the stupid uses of money until eventually it just collapses the system. It was provided as a strategy to destroy the United States, the Cloward-Piven strategy. Now, some people have argued that the plan of the massive welfare state and high taxation, even if not intended, is achieving that. And I think that is one of the big concerns, especially among Republicans, with the way that our tax dollars are spent. Let's see here. Frank Z, you're saying, the political demographics is changing now. We are going to vote conservative in the next election. Is this a Canadian? He's saying most are fed up with Trudeau and the whole liberal governance. Yeah, I've been seeing the writing on the wall too. Frank, I assume you're in Canada, right? I've heard this too from Canada, and I know a lot of Canadians who are, their conservative is different from American conservative. They're not like, they're not like for the Second Amendment, maybe, you know what I mean? But they're for like, just solid business and things like that, A lot of the Canadian conservatives, it's true that they're maybe not like Republicans in America, but they are conservative in their own way, and it's true that their politics are also swinging. The pendulum is swinging the other way. They've been under Trudeau for a long time. I mean, he's been in office for a long time, and so it is possible that the politics in Canada is changing in a similar way to the United States. That is very possible. In fact, some people are saying with Trudeau being pushed out of office now, which he is, even by his own party, in fact, you could see kind of an interim government that could be more on the liberal side, but they're expected to lose very quickly in the upcoming elections to the conservative side. And that is very likely what's going to happen in Canada, and just the writing on the wall right now, which is also why if they push Trudeau out, the next appointee from the Liberal government is kind of just, I don't know why anybody would even want to do it. You're basically going to go in just to lose an election. Like, it's not something a lot of people would want to do. And that's kind of what's projected to happen. So, we'll see. Jean-Marie, you're saying, I'm not American, but I'm wanting Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr., to get the job on health person. My question is, did Musk have to be interrogated to get his position? If not, why does Kennedy have to be? Right, so Elon Musk is technically a government employee, and that's how his position is defined. The Department of Government Efficiency was never really an American position. Trump created this. Just like he created the role of border czar with Tom Homan. That was not a real position before. I think that was kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing he did to Kamala Harris. Because remember Kamala Harris under Joe Biden, she was put in charge of like border security, and the media labeled her as the border czar. And when Trump was bringing attention to that, when he was on the campaign trail saying, look, Kamala Harris, I'm running against her. She was the border czar. Look at the border. It's a mess. And then the media all came out and said, she's not the border czar. It's not even a position. Trump is lying. Trump created the position. You know what I mean? He went and made it. And then he appointed Tom Homan to be in charge of it. So we now have a border czar, which we did not before. Technically ICE, Immigration Enforcement, or like Border Patrol would be that position normally, right? Customs Border Protection. And then Trump also created the DOGE Department, Department of Government Efficiency, which, it's basically like, it sounded like a meme at first because Elon Musk has the Dogecoin cryptocurrency. It's a meme coin. And then he has the DOGE Department, which people just thought was kind of funny, but hey, it's real. They're not laughing now, let's put it that way. Anyways, so Elon Musk, legally on paper, he's a government employee, and he's also not taking a salary. That is the legal side of it. Whereas RFK Jr. is an appointee to one of the government agencies, right? Health and Human Services. The heads of the government agencies, they have to be appointed. They have to go through the Senate vote. There are certain positions that are not like that. The Federal Communications Commission, for example, the FCC. Trump can just, he was able to just name the new head of that. Same thing with border czar, same thing with the DOGE Department. These are not official government agencies, and so they don't need to go through a confirmation hearing. That's a technicality of it. Right. Oh, and I'm sorry, on the point of the FCC, the reason he did not have to go through Senate confirmation is because he was already under it and he had already gone through Senate confirmation. And so because he was one of like the secondary officials and was actually in charge of it before, he was able to just go back in. And so he didn't have to go through that process, just to be clear. Another question here, Judy Akeem, you're saying, I have the strong feeling that Trump losing would have resulted in a timeline where the U.S. is vulnerable from the north to the Chinese coming through Canada. That was one of the big concerns, without a doubt. In fact, In fact, if you talk about actual invasion strategies, if we were to have a war with Russia or the Chinese Communist Party, were they to gain the power to launch a war like that, it would not be them landing on boats from the Pacific Ocean, you know what I mean? They're not going to like bring a bunch of invasion ships all across the entire Pacific Ocean and then try to attack us from there. We would blow them out of the water. It'd be like a shooting gallery. If we were to be attacked by them, it would come from the north. It would be through the Arctic, which is why Arctic security is such a big deal right now. And also Canada represents such an important security element for the United States. And also Greenland, why it represents such an important security element. And so that actually was one of the concerns. If there were a military attack in the United States, it would come through the north, which is also why I think Trump is taking it so seriously when he talks about Arctic defense and when he's making very serious statements about possibly taking Greenland. Which, by the way, update on Greenland, we'll see if they end up like selling it to the U.S., but Denmark has given permission for the United States to expand its military operations in Greenland. So buy it or not, the U.S. is going to be having a stronger military presence in Greenland. That door has been opened now. Let's see, Dan Blancard, you're saying, does Elon get retirement and insurance? Good question. I haven't heard anything on that. I don't know if Elon Musk needs it. He's like one of the richest men in the world. It'd be kind of funny. Oh, sorry, Don Blancard. It'd be kind of funny if he did take it. He's not taking payment right now. Maybe he'll get a pension. Normally, if you work for the government, look, if you become like even a state council member, you get a very cushy pension normally. It's not clear whether Elon Musk is going to get that or if he would even accept it. So, we'll see. All right, folks, that said, thank you so much for being here. Hey, folks, let's open it up. If you have any topics you would like me to cover, anything you would think I should look into, topics for investigation even, let me know, actually. Let me know in the comments. I am also very curious on what you would like to see me look into. So if you have recommendations on topics, possible investigations, if it's secure, you can email me, of course. Let me know, or even just what areas of interest. Am I covering the things you think matter? Am I missing stuff? Please let me know. I do pay attention to this stuff. That said, folks, thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to hit the like button. It does help us. Also, please share this episode. And that said, I'll see you again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. As always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.